Tistou of the Green Thumbs by Maurice Druon. Chapter 7, in which Tistou is entrusted to Mr. Turnbull, who gives him a lesson on order. Undoubtedly, Mr. Turnbull's explosive temperament must have been due to long familiarity with guns. Mr. Turnbull was Mr. Father's manager. Mr. Turnbull was in charge of the numerous employees in the factory and counted them each morning to make sure that none was missing. He looked through the barrels of the guns to make sure that they were perfectly straight, and in the evening he made sure that the doors were properly locked, often working late into the night to check the figures in the great ledgers. Mr. Turnbull was a very orderly man. Mr. Father had thought him a suitable person to continue Tistou's education the very next day. "Today we shall have a lesson about the town and a lesson about order," said Mr. Turnbull, standing in the hall as if he were addressing a regiment. It must be said that Mr. Turnbull had been in the army before he had taken to manufacturing guns, and even if he had not invented gunpowder, he knew at least how to explode. Tistou slid down the banisters. "Go back," said Mr. Turnbull, "and come down by the stairs." Tistou obeyed, although it seemed absurd to go up merely in order to come down again, now that he was downstairs already. "What have you got on your head?" asked Mr. Turnbull. "A checked cap." "Put it on straight, then." You mustn't think that Mr. Turnbull was a wicked man. He was merely rather choleric and enjoyed getting angry over trifles. "I should have preferred to continue my lessons with Moustache," Tistou said to himself. But he set out side by side with Mr. Turnbull. "A town," said Mr. Turnbull, who had taken pains to prepare the lesson, "consists, as you can see, of streets, monuments, houses, and the people who live in the houses. What, in your opinion, is the most important thing in a town?" "The botanical gardens," said Tistou. "Not at all," replied Mr. Turnbull. "The most important thing in a town is order. Without order, a town, a country, a whole society are merely as chaff before the wind and cannot endure. Order is essential, and in order to maintain it, disorder must be punished." "Mr. Turnbull must be right, of course," thought Tistou, "but why does he have to shout so loudly? Here's a grown-up with a voice like a trumpet. Does order mean making so much noise?" The passers-by in the streets of Mirepoix stopped and looked around, much to Tistou's embarrassment. "Pay attention, Tistou! What is order?" asked Mr. Turnbull severely. "Order? It's when one's happy." Mr. Turnbull said, and his ears turned even redder than they normally were. "I've noticed," Tistou went on, refusing to be intimidated, "that my pony, Gymnast, for instance, is much happier when he's been well rubbed down, properly groomed, and has his mane braided with silver paper than when he's all covered with dirt. And I know that Moustache, the gardener, smiles on the trees when they've been properly pruned. Isn't that order?" This answer did not seem to satisfy Mr. Turnbull, whose ears turned redder yet. "And what happens to people who create disorder?" he asked. "Well, they must be punished, of course," replied Tistou, who thought that creating disorder was rather like strewing his slippers about the room or strewing his toys over the garden. "They're put in prison here," said Mr. Turnbull, indicating to Tistou with a sweep of his hand a huge grey windowless wall, a most uncommon wall. "Is that the prison?" asked Tistou. "Yes, it is," said Mr. Turnbull. "It is a monument to the maintenance of order." They walked along the wall and came to a high black iron gate surmounted with spikes. And beyond the gate was a vista of further dismal walls. And all the walls and all the gates were topped with spikes. "Why did the builder put those horrible spikes everywhere?" asked Tistou. "What use are they?" "They stop the prisoners escaping." "If the prison wasn't so ugly," said Tistou, "perhaps they'd feel less desire to leave it." Mr. Turnbull's cheeks turned as red as his ears. What an odd child, he thought. He's really had no education at all. And aloud he said, "You ought to know that a prisoner is a wicked man." "And so they put him in there to cure him of his wickedness, do they?" asked Tistou. They try to teach him to live without stealing and without killing people." "Surely he'd learn much quicker if the prison wasn't so ugly," said Tistou. "Ah, stubbornness," thought Mr. Turnbull. Through the gates Tistou saw prisoners, walking silently round in a circle, their heads bowed. They looked terribly unhappy, with their shaven heads, their striped clothes, and their heavy boots. "What are they doing?" "It's their recreation hour," said Mr. Turnbull. "Well, really," thought Tistou, "if that's what their recreation's like, what must their hours in school be? This prison is really too dismal." He felt like crying, and was silent during the whole walk home. Mr. Turnbull interpreted his silence as a good sign, and thought that the lesson on order had borne fruit. All the same, he wrote in Tistou's report book, "The boy needs watching closely. He asks too many questions."